Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Odur Jagiro, and this is Dialogues with Jagiro. I'm continuing my conversation with Mildred Awino, my diviner for this series. We are
Indeed.
we are talking today about relationships, marriage. By the way, we know we need to talk about sex and spirituality. There is a lot of people. There are a lot of people that say that. So yeah, welcome. We have started. There are people that say that when you have sex with somebody, you commune with them spiritually.
Yes.
Do you know about that?
Yes, I do. I know there's a lot of emphasis on that, and I don't think it's a negative emphasis at all. It's important for people to realize that the human being, first of all, you're more than just your body, isn't it? You're your spirit, you're your soul, you're your emotions as well. You're multi-dimensional, you're multifaceted. When you're even sitting down in conversation with somebody, the way we are doing right now, it is also happening spiritually. We are communing spiritually as well, isn't it? And right now that I'm your diviner, the in-house diviner
Yes.
for the podcast, then it means that your ancestors are here, my ancestors are here. You never know. They could be communing. They could have been the ones who, met together and said, okay, maybe this needs to happen so that this message can go out to the masses. So imagine that level of interaction happening in a casual setup. Now make it intimate. Imagine how many, at what levels are you intersecting with the other individual? You're merging your spirits, you're merging your bodies, you're merging, the intellectual, the mind. There are so many things that could come about as a result, which is why there are people who actually work with sex as a healing tool. Isn't it? There are people who say that, sex can be therapeutic, which it is. And it can also be damaging. And we've seen it in terms of when it comes to assault, right? So that if sex was purely physical, then explain how an assault could affect somebody's entire life. It's because the damage was more than just physical. They did not need to go to hospital and heal and move on. They needed to also work on their spirit, on the psychological damage. There's so many implications. So I wouldn't want people to imagine that sex is just a purely physical act. Much as, yes, we are in hookup culture now, it's even more important for people to realize how you need to be conscious or at least intentional about who you're linking up with. You can't just be relating to anybody all willy-nilly. And we know what happens, and especially from a woman's perspective, that for us, sex is even more than just physical, it is also emotional. Much as you're entering a situation saying, yeah, we're just hooking up once and this is it, it's a one-night stand. But then we've seen these cases, we've seen how these stories end up, right? So I'd definitely say there is a connection between sexuality and spirituality. Right. So when you get into relationship in that way, understand what you're bringing to the table, understand who you are as a person. Because if you worked on yourself physically, Jagero, if you're somebody who takes care of your health, if you're somebody who's working on yourself psychologically to become a better individual, if you're somebody who's very active on your spiritual path, then I would imagine you're not going to be out here not being intentional about the person you're relating with in an intimate capacity. You'd be choosy, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you be? So, I would be the same way too, which is why there are others who are choosing celibacy as an option. And we know that celibacy, in a way, it works in terms of sexuality or sex as energy, right? Sexual energy. And I usually tell people, well, you don't have to be sexually active if you don't want to be. You can choose the other option. You can say, okay, let me take some time out and channel this creative energy, because sexual energy is creative energy, essentially, because that's where babies come from. So you can imagine what you can create when you sort of redirect that energy towards a creative project. So I usually tell people, when you're having dreams that are sexual in nature, maybe it's indicating to you there's maybe an excess or an abundance of that energy that you kind of need to not sit on or don't bottle up, channel it, create a project, do something with it, and you'll be shocked. That would be your baby. You don't need to create a literal baby. You can create, a creative one, right? Or in terms of your project. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about, and I mentioned it, is the essence of masculinity and femininity, because we are in that we're in that realm of that era where those stereotypes are being interrogated, isn't it? Where men are reviewing, or there's a kind of reckoning, what is masculinity? What does it entail in the modern era? What is femininity in the modern era? And you can see for yourself what's going on right now. There's a lot of struggle, right? And people are wondering, okay, so is a man meant to be a provider? And then what is the woman supposed to do? Is the woman meant to be traditionally domestic? And women are stepping forward to say, no, we are no longer domestic. We want to also create something for ourselves. We want to go out there into the marketplace and in a way have equal opportunity with men. So then what happens? Because when you define masculinity in terms of its functions, what you do, especially for the woman or for the feminine. For instance, Jagero, if you say masculinity is providing, so what does it mean? If your wife provides just as much as you, does it mean you're losing your masculinity? Does it mean that your wife is masculine? I don't think so. I don't believe we can define the genders in terms of function, because anybody can do anything, isn't it? It's more about the driving force, or in what direction is your energy taking you? If your energy is taking you towards creation, or towards expansion, or towards taking some kind of risk, towards some kind of protection, towards what has been given to you, then you'd say that's masculine type of energy. And again, the other thing we talk about in the spiritual realm, Jagger, is that anybody can be masculine. We are all psychological hybrids. Right?
What does that mean?
That means that we have both the masculine and the feminine element within us, and not even leaving genetics out of it, the X, Y, and what have you. But even when you look at astrology, when you looked at it, everybody has Mars, which is the masculine principle. Everybody has Venus, which is the feminine principle, isn't it? So it just means, how are you balancing these two elements within yourself? So even as a man, yes, you have the masculine trait, possibly because that's what you're leaning more into. It does not mean that as a man who is very masculine that you can't nurture. I remember when we were young, one of my earliest memories of my dad, and this is definitely, our fathers were very traditional. So my mother had traveled. I think she was away for a year in Ethiopia. She was working. So my dad is the one who used to sometimes make us our meals. And to this day, if you remind him, he'll deny it. He'll say, no, I did not cook anything. But I remember, and I tell him, actually, you made us ugali. Remember that time you made us ugali? And he made it in a square form, and then with vegetables and mala. I remember to this day. So it's a very early memory, but he denies it to this day. And I think it's,
Why do you think he denies it?
Well, I think traditional masculinity, as constructed, will not allow you to say that you can even go into the kitchen, that you can even cook, right? As a traditional, in the traditional way. But from a relational perspective within the home, does it mean if your wife is indisposed or unavailable or simply tired, does it mean you cannot, do the same thing, that you can't cook or order in or order out? Does it mean you can't nurture? Exactly. So it means you need to also step into the role of the feminine. So men can totally do that. And you're stepping into the role of the feminine when you're nurturing yourself. And this is why we look at the way relationships are constructed. We find that the nurturing element is lacking. When men are being raised, they are usually slanted towards this other side, the masculine element, and not the feminine. So they are taught to do all the good stuff that pertain to being a man, but are they taught to nurture themselves? Are they taught to take care of themselves, even health-wise? By the way, when I was working in the pension industry, and it is said that women live longer than men, and therefore their annuities are less. Men earn more annuities. The amount of annuities, the payment, the pension payment, is higher. And the reason is not what you think. The reason is because men live shorter, or rather women live longer. So you'll pay a woman for longer than when you're paying a man. So what does that mean, really? If somebody was doing research, what are the underlying factors or causes to a lower mortality, factors in men than in women. And I believe that still ties into the nurturing element, because health is nurturing. Remember how when we're talking about water and how it's associated with the feminine, and how also health is associated with that. So health is definitely something to do with the nurturing of the body, also honoring the body. I don't know if we talked about this in a different forum, or if not, but just to remind you how the women or goddess-related religions are very body-oriented, isn't it? Where women's bodies are not seen as unclean, right? Especially when it is performing its basic function, which is during pregnancy, menstruation, and childbirth. And if you look at especially paternal religions or paternal orders, the woman's body is seen as unclean during those very basic functional periods in a woman's life. So what does that tell you about the masculine approach to the body and the feminine approach to the body? So when we are raising our men, our children, because I'm a mother to a boy, a son as well. I'm not a boy mom. I know there's a whole trend of boy moms.
What does that mean?
Boy moms are like mommy's boys. When you're raising a child, a boy, to be utterly dependent on you and not really raising the boy the way you raise the girl. So you're very tough and hard on the girl, but you let the boy be a boy. You do everything for the boy. You do not give him basic training. And these are the guys who grow up and still need their mother to come and cook for them or to clean their house for them.
Or marry in order to get a mother.
Exactly. So you see, this is what translates onto the next relationship. So when he's going into relationship, the things he's looking for, first of all, are what you would deem motherly roles, the nurturing roles. Then the other things come after, the character of the woman. What else can she, is she a great partner to me? Is she adding to my wealth, so to speak, or legacy? So you see men enter relationships looking for the mother, because in a way they have not been taught to nurture themselves. So as the mother to a boy, and having seen those patterns, I'm also trying to do my part to raise a more conscientious, a more balanced son, who when he goes out there, I'm not handing him over to the next woman to mother him, right? I want to hand him over complete, right?
What's wrong with a man being mothered?
It's not wrong. In fact, we all need to be nurtured. The only problem is it becomes a complex when you can't nurture yourself, when you can't mother yourself. And when I say that, I mean when you can't take care of yourself, you can't cook. Like if your wife is not there, you'll die, you won't eat. You will not eat. When your wife is not there, you're finished. You can't clean the house. You can't do the basic functions that are regularly or usually associated with women. So that's what I mean.
I hope we are not live.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Yeah, so that becomes a complex. We all want nurturing partners who will care for us, not treat us as the next person of the street. So that's different. I believe men should be nurtured, and women should be nurtured as well. But you see, the kind of nurturing men require is the kind of nurturing that comes from a mother. Right? You can't just, or rather the way they have been conditioned. They need the kind of nurturing that would come from a mother. So it's good to, when we are raising our sons, to be able to teach them how to do the basic self-nurturing, so that your partner that is coming in is only adding, right? They're not coming to fill a void. Because what we usually say is, what you don't accept, you reject or you project. So because men are not accepting the nurturing role, it is now projected onto the woman. Therefore, the woman is the nurturer. The woman is the one who needs to clean. The woman should be in the kitchen, right? So that's a projection. It's just a mass projection. But, we'll revisit that when you're talking about the mother and the father wounds. But I also talking about femininity, right? So femininity is, protection is also, interestingly, a function of femininity. So it's not just unique to masculinity, because look at it as from a mother's perspective. You've seen, and especially when you deal with animals, you know that a mother A mother is the fiercest. A mother bear is fiercer than a male bear. A lioness will be fiercer than when protecting her children, especially. And do you know that when it comes to, in the lion kingdom, the male lion sometimes attacks the cubs. So the lioness has to protect.
Even in the hippo community.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So there's always a kind of...
they kill the man.
Yeah. So the mother has to step forward as a protective agent, right? So that's why I usually look at these functions, defining genders through their functions, through either side eye, because both genders can do the same thing. And these qualities I'm talking about, they are not, they are universal. Remember, like I said, we are hybrids. We are male and female. It's just that we choose to express one side more than the other. But we can choose differently. You can choose that as a woman, I can nurture, I can protect, but I can also provide. Right? And I don't even know what other experience brings out the protective and providing side of a woman like motherhood. And when I talk about motherhood, it's not necessarily those that give birth, because there are those who adopt. There are those who are mothers to, Minji, right? You have a community that is depending on you. And one thing we don't really think about is now we're in a patriarchy or a patriarchate. But we also, before the patriarchate, we had the matriarchate, isn't it? It was the mothers or the women who were the leaders of society at that time. But that also was there to fulfill a certain function. And when you have a matriarchate, or rather in history when matriarchates existed, they were eras when life needed to be preserved. Especially at the beginning, just when you're starting a society and you need to preserve life and you need numbers, you need women. Women need to be the ones who are leading, because how else? How else? And we can see the shift from the matriarchy to the patriarchy, the view or the attitude towards life in general. What does the patriarchy think of life, and how does the patriarchy treat life as opposed to the matriarchy? I'm not saying that the solution to the patriarchy is to overthrow it and replace it with a matriarchy. I'm saying we are better off looking at these things as balancing. You need partly to have women as well to have a say, because women are better placed where life is concerned, where nature is concerned. By the way, women, our bodies are associated or deemed to be closer to nature than the man's body. And it's because of, again, those functions, isn't it? There's nothing that terrifies a man like a woman with a bleeding womb, or a woman who's just undergone or who's pregnant. They will actually treat you very differently. Because I remember when I was pregnant, it was a wonderful time in society. And it was even men who were giving me preferential treatment because they could see, okay, this one is with child. So you can just see how attitudes shift around the body and how we treat ourselves. So that's what I mean when I talk about the masculinity and femininity as qualities, not necessarily as gender expressions, because then we get caught up. You get caught up. Fine. You can say I'm in my masculine energy if I'm providing, but that still, it doesn't capture the essence, because even women inherently will protect and provide.
Talking about pregnant women, I wonder how the universe treats two souls that are practically attached to each other. So when you're pregnant as a woman, you're practically two souls in one. Right?
Actually, we look at it. I have a controversial take on that, because my view is that you can't have two souls in one body. When you have two souls in one body, you're possessed, essentially. It has to be one body, one soul, which is why, yes, you're carrying a life, but the soul enters the body during childbirth or right after, which is why sometimes...
Oh, really?
Yes, because that's when we have cases when the soul does not enter the body, meaning you get a stillbirth, right? The child is not alive. But then when the child is born, that is a very critical moment, because that is when the soul enters the body, just before or right after. So the esoteric principle behind that is that you cannot be possessed as an individual. Right? So there are cases of possession, but in this case, birth is natural. So you cannot naturally be possessed in that way. It has to be one body, one soul, which is why even a pregnant woman, when they have passed away for a very unfortunate event, they have to remove the body of the child. You can't be buried while pregnant. In a way, they have to separate you, right? So they always have to look at each body with its own soul, right? So you have to look at it like that.
So do you think that they assume that even though they will bring because you've said that the soul enters the body when at birth.
Yeah, right, during the childbirth
But then
process.
if, for example, the mother and the baby dies, when the baby is still in the womb, do you think that the soul still repossesses the body even though it's lifeless?
No, I think what I look at it as, these are soul contracts, isn't it? So the mother, in a way, depending on the outcome of the pregnancy, it does not depend on the mother, more of the soul that is coming in. So the soul, which is why even we can have children who are named after ancestors, because it's an ancestral soul that is entering that body. And even from my own experience doing traditional divination, we've had cases where you can't really get so far in the reading because there is a birth that is impending. There's a soul that wants to come through to this other side through a pregnancy. And also, similarly, there could be a soul that wants to join the ancestral realm through a death. So we have to look at it in terms of the contract can be voided. It can be voided either by the mother. The mother can decide to void, and we've seen this through terminating the pregnancy. It can also be voided from the soul's perspective, which is either through a miscarriage or through a stillbirth. For reasons best known. Sometimes we can't know everything, so it is best known to the soul. Sometimes it could be an issue with a birth defect, you never know. It could be a spiritual issue, or even the conditions into which the soul is being brought into might not be compatible with that particular soul. So that contract is voided, which is why I usually tell mothers, they take it very hard, and naturally so, when you've undergone a miscarriage or a stillbirth. And they tend to blame themselves, and they tend to personalize that particular event. And I usually have to then bring it to the attention that this was a case where it was you and navigating a soul across onto this realm. Now you can imagine a case where it's not you who has voided. The minute, you were there taking care of yourself, doing everything right. But for whatever reason, the soul that was incoming did not deem it either appropriate, or the time wasn't right. Something could have happened because the reasons vary. Then you have to look at it as, okay, take it easier on yourself and look at it as maybe there's another opportunity or a better time for this to happen. Right. So the woman becomes, in that way, she's a portal. I know it's more of a cliche when you talk about it like that, but yes, you are a portal because you're navigating a soul. A soul has to pass through this, from the astral realm to the physical realm to the earthly realm, but through a woman's body, through the mother's body, and through the child's body that comes out of the mother. It's
a very spiritual route when it comes to birthing a child.
Yeah.
So let's get into the controversial bit of it. And how about abortion? Tell me about how the spirits deal with abortion, especially when I have this feeling that just when a baby is about to be born or a pregnancy is taking place, there's an excitement in the universe.
Yeah.
There's a soul coming. There's
hope.
There's hope.
Yeah.
And a mother takes the decision of
avoiding it. Yeah. I see what you mean.
Be bold about it.
Let me be bold. Because these are things we've gone through. I've had to cancel clients through these events. And the thing is, yes, it's a wonderful moment. It's like the seed. When a seed has been planted and it's going to grow.
I want to reposition this mic for you because I think that I see you trying to avoid it.
Sawa.
Yes.
It's too close. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Apple.
Thank you. So when you're pregnant, it's like a seed has taken root, and of course there's that hope and that happiness or optimism in the universe. However, I also know from an esoteric perspective that everything must happen with consent. Souls, because that's why pregnancy is a contract, it's a soul contract.
It's a contract between who and who?
Is yourself and the soul that is coming in. Right? So it has to be, and contracts have to be, you either accept it or you reject it. Which is why I talked about as a woman, or the person who is the one party to the contract can decide to void the contract for whatever reason, right? You can decide to void it. And I know how it sounds like, and it's because the morality of the spirit realm is not necessarily the same as our human morality, which is why, like I said, somebody can commit a sin and be a very small sin, or you can deem it as a small sin, but the punishment is too much for you from your perspective. But from the perspective of the spiritual, it meets or matches the sin. But what I would say is it cannot happen, nothing can happen in this universe without consent. So when you're birthing or giving birth to a child, when you're pregnant, you are actively consenting to bring a soul into the universe, or into the earth rather, into the material realm. But you must understand that you also have the right to say no. No. Because remember, this other soul can also void the contract. What happens then? Is there morality around miscarriage? Is there morality around stillbirth? Right? Because these are deemed as the soul voiding the contract. So if the soul can void the contract, why not the mother in this case? So there's those provisions. You wouldn't say that you should or shouldn't, because that's a whole other discussion, but the provisions are there.
I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their local area. Now, the truth is there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs, and those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans, because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using paybill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online and I've been traveling and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much, and now back to programming. Remember what the government says?
Yeah.
The Kenyan government maintains that your child, that you do not have authority over your child that you're carrying. And sometimes they say that in Kenya, abortion is criminal.
Yeah, it's illegal here.
In a sense, they're saying that you don't have authority over that life that is sitting right inside of you. Okay? So then I would assume that in the spiritual world, the universe or wherever it is can say, you remember when we talked about the Spirit of God was moving upon the waters?
Right.
The Spirit of God moving upon the waters can claim that that's not yours. You have no decision to make over that life. That life has been propagated by us. We are anxiously waiting for it to come.
Yeah.
Like childbirth, we will put a soul inside of it, and therefore you have no
authority
over it.
Wonderful, because that's actually what we expect to hear from what we call the paternal orders.
Yes.
The paternal order will want to have authority over over life itself, and over, of course, women who bring life forth. So that's them exercising their authority. But again, that's not the only authority. We have the fathers, the paternal orders, but what about the maternal orders? From the maternal order perspective, we have what we call the great mother, the one who births life, the one who gives life. And then we have the devouring mother. The devouring mother is the one who takes back the life that she herself created.
That's death.
Yes. She takes it back.
The mother of life
yes,
and the mother of
she's
death.
both, exactly. Remember how I talked about Mami Wata and how she holds a serpent and how the serpent represents life and regeneration and death and birth, the cycle. So from a maternal order perspective, it's not just about giving life. The function of the feminine is not just giving life. The feminine has the power to give life, and she has the power to take life as well. Which is why when you go into the waters, and that's another thing I was talking about, when you talk to the divers, people who go down there, there's a certain atmospheric pressure where it gets to a certain depth where you can't survive. You are absorbed, you're taken, you're reabsorbed back into the bowels of the earth through the water. It takes you. So what does that then mean? It means that the feminine has the function as well, or the power to do it. So the should and the shouldn't is neither here nor there. It depends on your individual morality. But because the feminine is the one that gives life, then she can also devour it. Which is why, let me give you an example of the devouring mother. There are actually, you've seen animals that eat their young, mothers who eat their young. One. Two, you don't have to devour your child literally. You can also devour them figuratively. We've seen these mothers who, especially the boy moms, right? The ones who their child is an extension of them and will always be an extension of them. They don't want to let the child go or leave the nest. They are always hovering around, meaning that this child will always grow up looking to the mother for direction, for inspiration, for everything. They don't become independent. So a devouring mother is somebody who can do it literally. And when you're getting an abortion, I would call that you in your devouring mother type of aspect. You're the devouring mother in this case. But it is important to note that devouring mother as an archetype, as a theme, exists in the realm of the feminine. So when you're looking at femininity, it's good to see both sides again, the duality. Right. So are you the great nurturing mother who gives life, or are you the devouring mother who takes life or who inhibits life? And I remember sometimes I catch myself being a devouring mother when sometimes you can feel cold, and then I tell my son, go wear a jumper, go wear a sweater because I'm feeling cold. Because you see, you're still plugged into your child that way. Meaning, you're not looking at them as a separate entity. They're part of you. So if I'm feeling cold, you're definitely feeling cold, please wear a sweater. And then my son comes back and says, no, but I'm not feeling cold. Then when he says that, I leave him. I'm like, okay, he's an independent individual, he's an independent soul, and he's told me he's not feeling cold. Fine, me, I'll go and wear my sweater, and I'll just make sure it's not cold. But honoring your offspring in that way, especially when they are in the earth or in the world, when you've navigated them.
The idea of testing our relationships as a unique soul.
Yes.
What does it exactly mean?
Oh, wow, that's a wonderful topic, in fact, because I want to look at it in terms of the archetypes of masculinity and femininity. And people express themselves differently. Now, I look at it in terms of, as you as a person, where do you fall in terms of one? There are those who fall under the eternal youths. They are called puer aeternas, the ones who never grow up, the mama's boys and mama's girls, right? The ones who are looking for their mothers or their fathers, so that to continue the work of their original parent. So usually those are the ones, the eternal youth are usually attached very much to their mother. The eternal youths are the ones who move from woman to woman to woman. And we can go deeper into why that happens, and the ones who are never satisfied.
Let's go deeper.
Oh wow, okay. Now the reason is remember how I mentioned the mother and how sometimes you can have such a close and devouring relationship with your mother to the point where you develop a complex, right? So these men who we deem the eternal youths tend to look for the mother in their partners, especially their sexual partners, which is why they won't settle down. The minute they link up with a woman, they lose interest, because this woman has not, in some ways, into this person's psychology, they have not met the standard of his perfect woman, because the perfect woman does not exist. It is something that he's just projecting because he has not had an opportunity to develop a healthy relationship with the feminine, right? So he will consistently be looking next woman, next woman, next woman, next woman. And another thing about the eternal youth is that they see men who are now after eternal youth, you have the father or the warrior, right? And the wise man. So the eternal youth looks at the warrior, the father, the one who's getting things done. They look at them as boring or squares. I mean, you've seen people say this, that a man who's taking care of business, a man who's providing for his children, a man who's a good father and a good husband, they look at them as a simp, or as a square, or someone who's not really living his best life when he could be. So you have to recognize where that psychology is coming from. It's coming from a complex somewhere in this person's childhood. And usually when you sit with the men who have that mentality of, my job is to simply be flirty and have many women and be polygamous and, without responsibility. So I'm not hitting on polygamy, but I'm hitting on polygamy without responsibility. So men who have that mentality are deep in the mother complex. And if you sit down and interrogate them, usually about their relationship, their past, tell me about your relationship with your mother. Tell me about, how was life growing up? Then you start identifying how this person could have fallen into the devouring mother complex. He's now trying to let go in some ways or to release himself, but he's doing so negatively. And usually these are now the men who end up being violent towards women. Oddly enough, I know it's a paradox, but usually men who have that kind of attitude towards the feminine or towards women, it tells you that there is something that went wrong in their past when it came to relating with their mother or their mother figure or the principal woman in his life growing up. Now we have those ones. That's the eternal youth. Also, we have women who are eternal youths. The ones who want to be taken care of, essentially, with no responsibility or nothing, or not giving anything back. And I'm not saying quid pro quo, no. I'm just talking about, I'm getting taken care of by this man, but what am I doing? Am I meeting his needs as well? The ones who just want their needs to be met. And sometimes you see that early 20s, 18, 22, 23, in campus there was, very happy-go-lucky, you want to have fun and not settle down and, flirt with as many people as possible, just living your best young life. Now, it becomes a complex when you're older, you're much older, but you still have that mentality of, I want to be taken care of. That's why they talk about daddy issues with such women, because they're looking for an extension of what their father gave to them, which is why it's so important when you're doing your self-discovery and self-knowledge to interrogate. What are my biases here? Do I have any complexes that I need to work on? What are my relationship patterns? And now there are people who attract eternal youths. And you could be here wanting to deal with somebody who's grown, responsible, organized, independent, but you tend to attract. Why is that? That takes me to the next point. Usually the eternal youths tend to be attracted to the people who we call if it's a woman, it's an Amazon figure who's like the woman warrior, very strong, Artemis, Athena type woman, getting things done, independent. So the eternal youth tends to, because there's a weakness they have when it comes to independence, they will gravitate towards very independent women. Knowing fully well they're not going to commit to those women, but they tend to be attracted to an Amazon type of woman, which is now where you get the cougars and, the older women who have it all going for them, dating much younger men who don't seem to have anything going for them. So they tend to be bedfellows if they're not intentional. Remember how I talked about being intentional when you're coming together with another individual. So if you're very unconscious of who you are and what you're attracting, then these are the cycles that will tend to happen. You'll always be that person who's attracting a certain type of person. And the same way to the eternal youth, who's a woman, who will attract an older man, a warrior type, an executive. These are your executives, the ones who, they're the top of their game, and they tend to now hang out with the younger women, isn't it? Men in their 40s and 50s. They tend to now want to hang out. So they attract the eternal youths. And then these are the same people who will still complain that, okay, women are like this, but they don't realize, it's actually a subsection of women that you're attracting because they are in this state of mind. That's not the only type of way to exist. Now, that's one. Now, we've talked about the Amazon and the warrior type of personality, these are very independent, work-oriented, they are achievement-oriented. Now you can imagine they are the CEOs. So we have men.
The ones with big cars.
Yes, those ones. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Big bungalows.
We love those guys. Yes.
In Langata.
Yes, those ones we call them the Amazons.
The Amazon women.
Amazon women, and also warrior men, the ones who go out there into the world and conquer the world and get things done and take risks. So there are men who are more traditional and then look at, choose an Amazon and then want to domesticate an Amazon type of woman. And you ask yourself, why would you do that to yourself if you kind of want to erase or minimize this woman's key or core features? Because if I'm a woman and my predominant personality is that of the Amazon, then I'm going to be career focused more than a woman who's on in the next section, which we are going to, which is the mother and the father. Those ones are wonderful. They are perfect for each other, right? Because that's now the nurturing, domestic, goddess type woman. The one who, Mother Earth, Minji, the one who you can come home to and lie on her lap and just, all the problems of the world dissipate, right? So you can find warriors the warrior men tend to gravitate towards those kinds of women, either that or the eternal youths. Right? Then we have the mothers. So the mothers can also attract an eternal youth as well because the nurturing element, right? So you always make sure that if you're a mother figure or you have those mother type personalities, what do you want in your partner? Because a lot of those women who are nurturing will maybe end up with a warrior type or executive type of man who's really also out of the home for the most part. They're out there making money, and that's fine, but they're just not able to meet your emotional needs, for instance, or they're not able to be active fathers in the home, for instance. So that becomes a problem. So that's why it's good to know what you want or what you need. So because you know what you're giving, you know what you're bringing to the table, as cliche as it sounds. So what do you need? So the person you're attracting, are they able to serve your need as well? Or meet, not really serve, but meet your need. Then you have the wise woman and the wise man. Those are now, the elders of society, elder figures. So you can be...
Not really elder in age.
Not in age at all. They also, for myself, since I'm just about to turn 40, I'm about to consider myself a wise woman because, in the olden times, an old person, in fact, from age 35, you're an elder. You're an elder. Yes, you're an elder. It's just that we are in a different generation where we don't meet the metrics of adulthood early the way our parents did. So in some ways we still feel young and we also look young, isn't it? So it's just my silver hair that will give away the fact that I'm an elder. But maybe mentality-wise, I'm still somewhere between the Amazon and the mother, right? Now, the wise woman is the one the healer, the one who gives advice, the intuitive woman, the mystic. So there are men who are attracted to that kind of a woman, isn't it? And then there's the wise man, the leaders of society. And sometimes those are the dictators, the what you call the iron-fisted fathers of society. And this is where a lot of problems occur, because what I've noticed in society is that there is a massive lack of wise men or father figures, because we can say that because of the state of affairs with the younger generation, the younger men, right? And you know that because the younger men in some ways are blaming the women, right? What is wrong with society? This is feminists. This is feminists. That's the problem. But again, such...
Don't you agree?
No,
Feminists are messing us up. Are you a feminist?
Actually, yes, I consider myself a feminist. By the way, was it 2 years ago, I was invited to give a talk to feminists around the world about, I was talking about astrology of activism. And I was talking about the future of feminism or the future of the women's rights movement. So I was talking about how actually between 2025 and 2028, you're going to see a massive shift. You're going to see more women leaders coming up, to society, women presidents. And we started seeing it anyway.
Mexico.
Yeah.
Yesterday was announced. Actually,
oh, it was yesterday. Yes. I didn't see the news yesterday.
Yesterday, for the first time in South America, a woman has trounced all the men, and funny enough, number 2 is also a woman.
Wow, good for them. That's amazing.
It's the man.
Wow, they're definitely what I call progressive society, because then it means they are coming to the point where they realize these things, masculinity.
They voted in an Amazon.
Yes, they voted an Amazon. So masculinity and femininity does not need to exist in a man or a woman. So look at the individual that has the best attributes that you want. It could be in a man, it could be in a woman. So I like that direction, actually. I like it. So yes, I was giving that talk. And the other thing is feminism is simply about equal opportunity, equal rights. And that means that you're also able to see where men are not getting their equal rights. Personally, when I was still in the workforce, I've missed out on a job because of gender parity. The place where I was going to work was like 90% women. And when I did the interview, I was the top candidate. This is now, because I knew somebody in there, so they were giving me the information. I was the top candidate, but because of gender parity, they had to go with the number 2, who was a man. And I can't be mad at that. I can't be mad at that because it could easily be the other way around, isn't it? So as a feminist, you have to know or realize that your interests are about society. It's not just simply about women only, although women are the focus, because in some ways we still have some way to go, some distance to go to get to an equal status in society. And a lot of that equality, the inequality is in the mind, in the mindset or consciousness of people. Right now I can say we are getting there, but we're not there yet. So I'm giving it like a space of maybe 3 years to see a lot more advancement, right? So when you look at these 4 boxes, people tend to,
I hear the universe is saying that the next vice president in Kenya might be a woman.
Oh, is it? Is it? I've not really focused a lot on our local politics.
A wise man said it on the steps of the Kenyan State House.
I mean, if they said it there, then that would be wonderful to see. It would be a great step.
I hear that Ruto wants his next running mate to be a woman.
Oh, really? Well, that would be great.
And he went with Wanga to the United States visit.
Well, that would be wonderful. But again, I just hope it's not a token. Like a token. I don't want. We want.
What do you mean by a token?
Token in that this is just to meet a particular standard, just to meet it, not necessarily because it is merited, right? It has to be. There's some element of merit that has to be there, because we also we want good representation. Right?
Yeah.
We've seen women who...
I think it might be tokenism, because I think Ruto is trying very much to be like... Remember, the way Kagame has been revered around Africa by the bold decisions that he's taken. Most of his government consists of women. Women are very high up in his government. And I think Ruto sometimes look at himself as a man that wants to get to that level.
But you see, you have to do things, not just appoint people. Even if it's women, make sure that they are the kind of women who are going to perform and give you or bring you that kind of...
Bring you value.
Yes, bring you value.
They are saying that Harris has not given the United States people.
It said, so they say, and I mean, according to that, if that's their perception, then there has to be some validity to that. So there's work to be done around showing some kind of transformation, because things rarely change just because there's a woman vice president. Things rarely change just because there's a woman CEO. And why? Because that woman is operating under a system, isn't it? There's a system. So there's usually the personal effort or the personal responsibility, but there's also the systemic issues. Yeah. So when you look at those four kind of archetypes, then you're able to identify where you kind of fit into and the kind of personalities that you tend to attract. If you tend to attract the warrior men, or you tend to attract the youths, the eternal youths, or you tend to attract the wise men, or you tend to attract the fathers, and also on the other side, attracting the mother figures, or you're attracting the Amazons, career oriented. So you see, the men, the current male generation is raging against the Amazon, because feminists are Amazon figures, isn't it? Feminists are the ones who are fighting for women to get out there and be in the boardroom just as men, to be able to do the things that men are doing. So I don't think that they realize they are raging against only one aspect of femininity, because Amazon type woman is also an aspect of femininity. Remember how we talked about providing and protecting. So the ability of a woman to exist fully in her divinity as an Amazon should be celebrated or should be encouraged. So that if you as a man do not resonate with a career-focused, career-oriented, independent feminists, then imagine there are other archetypes of women you can deal with. There's the mother element. We call them also kienyeji. We live in Kenya. You can also get a traditional woman. So you can't tell me that there is a shortage of
kienyeji woman.
Yes, you cannot tell
domesticated.
me. Yes, domesticated. You cannot tell me in this country you can't find the woman the kind of woman you want. There are independent women, yes. There are traditional women, yes. There are women who prefer to be taken care of and not really do much in return. Then it's for you to kind of put yourself out there and be very conscious of what is it that is making you also react so violently to one type of an archetype. So as a man, why is an Amazon so triggering to you? You see, those are the questions. And usually, I can tell you this, one of the other secrets I've found out is that I've studied the manosphere as well, right, in terms of the content that they compassionately, because I research these things. Sometimes I will actually listen to thought leaders of the manosphere for research, right, and just to understand their thought process. And
do you consider Elliot as one of them?
Elliot, I know him actually. I know him. I've not. I think he's written a few books. I've not really focused on that, but I do know that he's trying to fit into the role of a father figure, right? So the question is, I'd put to Elliot is he the actual father figure, the wise man, or is he the shadow father figure? Because again, remember, there's duality. So for each of you, remember all of these archetypes have the shadow side and the positive side, the light and the shadow. So you can be a father figure who is not nurturing, or who is redirecting responsibility, or who is redirecting attention from the actual issue into a side issue. Or you can be the actual father figure who is nurturing, who is training men in the way they should go. So I think wherever he could fall, in either of those dichotomies, but I would place him in the father archetype. So depending on the effect of his work, so that's where I'd place him. Usually I tend to look at people, I hear them out, and then that will also give me some information in terms of the direction of their energy. Where are they directing the energy of men? Are they directing the energy of men outward towards a scapegoat? Or are they directing the attention of men inward towards reparenting themselves and becoming the fathers that they did not have? So there are men who, if Elliot wanted to step up into that figure as a father, because many of the men in the manosphere, men who follow manosphere leaders, are seeking father figures. That's essentially what they're seeking. In fact, if you sit with them and you look, you ask, you also interrogate their family background, you'll find an absent father, either physically absent or mentally, emotionally absent. Therefore, and then you'll find the mother who is very docile, or a mother whose animus, the animus principle is very underdeveloped. She does not speak up for herself. So that kind of a person grows up with a certain predisposition. They might want women who are like their mothers, very docile, or expect every woman to be the way their mother was, right? And then now, because there's a lack of a father, they still need that affinity to a father, to the fathers of the society. So sometimes the fathers of society are essentially shadow fathers. They are there, yes, they are figures, shadow figures, father figures, but they are not directing your attention where it should be directed to. That's why we call them shadow figures. And you can see a lot of these manosphere, the influence of the manosphere being negative, because we've seen a rise in DV and femicide. In fact, the beginning of this year, I was almost getting discouraged, Jakero, because I was like, what is this, a spirit? What is this that has gripped our society, where women are seen as property or as, disposable, essentially? And you have to look at, then interrogate, what are these men being influenced in terms of how they view women, right? So if your aim as a man is to subdue a woman, then you're probably under the grips of a shadow father. Because fathers will teach you to go out there and become respectable. If you want respect, you must be respectable. And what are the metrics of respectability? It is achievement, it is integrity, it is being kind to others, it is being a value and an addition to your society. And you see, this is why we used to have initiation rituals.
Ceremonies,
Yeah,
yes.
ceremonies. And these were not just to, for fun. There was a psychological role that initiation ceremonies played, especially for men, because it took them out of the world of the mothers, because it's the mothers that raised the children, isn't it, up to a certain age. And then it is, especially boys, right? So taking the boy out of the world of the mothers and bringing him or bridging him into the world of the fathers. And now the fathers take him through what it entails to be a man, right? He's essentially trained. And now you have to be manly. This is what it entails to be a man. So you're no longer involved with the world of the mothers or with the women. So if, as a man, your mainstay is women, is to maybe talk about women or talk about how women are the problem, then you are in some ways seeking an external scapegoat, right? It is, I would prefer, I wish, well, maybe it happens, when men have those conversations, when those father figures have those conversations where they interrogate, how can we bring back these rituals, not necessarily initiation the way it was done, but a rite of passage. We lack rites of passage now. That's why people are 28 and still feeling like they're not adulting. Adulting is intimidating to us, because where were the rights? Who told us, okay, now this is the point of adulthood, this is what you need to do? We don't have that. We are left to our own devices. So the lack of a rite of passage exposes both men and women to becoming eternal youths who don't want to grow up, essentially. And that's why the fathers used to take over after the rite of passage for boys. After that, the boys, you would not see a man out here talking about women, because that's not his place, that's not his role. His role is to be out there achieving and becoming a respectable member of society. So I would really love to see more father figures like that, and not essentially those ones who are shadows. Because men, especially because they lack the rites of passage, some of them lack an active father figure, they require or need guidance, isn't it? So it's something I would be wonderful to see if somebody acts as an actual father, the one that these men needed when they were growing up. So there's that. And also for women, we also have, we used to have the aunties, the singers, the ones who used to come to the bridal showers, but some kind of femininity coaching or some femininity training. And it used to happen when we were younger, right? So that's one thing that I feel is so critical. And even for me, who's raising a son, I'm very cognizant, by the way, because it takes a village. It takes a village. You can't raise, especially a boy, and me being a woman, there's something there. You still need a masculine figure to come in at some point. So I have that at the top of my mind that, yes, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, but I can't teach my son everything, right? There's some things that he needs to receive from his uncle. There's some things he needs to receive from his grandfather, my father, for instance. And by then, did you know, and I'll probably give more examples. That's one thing I'll put on my site, maybe, a piece, because in the very ancient world, women, the fathers to children, were not their biological fathers. It was the brother of the mother who was a father. So fathers were not the ones who biologically fathered the child. The father was a figure who was, and especially this brings us back to the whole conversation of matriarchies and matrilineal lineages, where it is the brother of the mother who stepped up to be a father figure to the woman's son. So that's what I mean when I talk about it takes a village, right? So when you look at those when you look at those wounds, I really sometimes feel for this current generation. I see where that pain and that anger is coming from. It's just that how do you break that down into information that can be received positively, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are on the 1 hour mark.
Oh,
59 minutes.
Wow. Oh, sorry. Oh,
Is there anything that you want to add before we finish?
I would definitely let people know that it's good before you relate to somebody. It is good to relate to yourself first. Understand who you are at your core. Understand what you lacked in childhood, because a lot of us are seeking what we lacked also in childhood. There's those of us who seek what we had. We want more of what we had, and those who want what we lacked. So when you understand that, you are better able to see or track your patterns. Some of us have toxic patterns. Some of us tend to attract very toxic partners. Why? Right? And sometimes you need to work with somebody. Since we do not go through rites of passage, that's why therapists also would play that role as somebody who midwives you through from one cycle of life to the next. You might need active mentorship. Again, seek a father figure. For men, seek not a shadow, father figure. Seek an actual father figure, one you can pick up the phone and call. Somebody you respect, because I realize men receive things better from people they respect, especially if it's an older man, they receive it better. So that's what I would definitely tell them, because you don't know the kind of wounds that a shadow person online is operating from. That person may have lacked a father. That person's mother may not have been up to par to his personal standards. So that's the place they are speaking from. But not necessarily the next person. Maybe the next man had an active father and a mother who was also just as active. So it's always good to know who you are and where you're going. Surround yourself with support, right? And people who have your best interests at heart and society's best interests at heart.
Thank you very much. I hope that you loved this episode. It was an episode that I really loved, especially talking about pregnancy, talking about souls, talking about the fact that you only get a soul when you jump out of the body.
Absolutely.
Please consider subscribing to this episode. Next episode, we are talking about what?
Prophecy, false prophecy, and just the role of prophets in society.
Okay. Yeah. So stick around and get to the next episode, which is our 6th episode, right?
Yes.
And so until another episode, bye for now.
Bye.